Today is the anniversary of the British Bulldog Davey Boy Smith's passing. What are your memories of being in Davey's corner for his 2 matches with Shawn Michaels at In Your House, Beware of Dog, and King of the Ring 1996? So let's open it up a little wider, Jim. What are your memories of Davey?
Well, and specifically, there was 2 Beware of Dogs because we did do the match for the people in the building, even though it wasn't very good because Shawn wasn't happy. Davey was like a big kid, and I don't think anybody understands how great an athlete that he really was. And I mean, everybody knows that he could have a 4-star match when he wanted to, and there was some times there at the end when, I don't think he was motivated that well, but he could have great matches, especially with guys that knew how to wrestle. I don't think that he was, I've talked about that time, that stinker between him when he was a heel and Nash was a babyface. He either didn't have it or didn't want it that night. But he could do everything. And even though he put on so much weight to have the body, he moved like a light heavyweight, and he had such flexibility, and he was so strong at the same time. He was just a special athlete in the ring, but he was like a big kid, and him and Owen together, it was lightened up the mood because they were, always happier getting into the mischief, as everybody's reported. But I don't know why. I guess it was just the time period why that they didn't do more with him when he was so hot in England, and then they let the match we talked about before, where he promised the match with Michaels, the European title, which they told him was his, he was going to win, to his dying sister, and then Michaels got the finish changed. That buried him. I think took a lot of the enjoyment of the business out of it for him. Then WCW, bungled and fungled him. He hurt his back on the bad trap door in the ring, right, or something like that. And so he really, they started him out from the early 90s with the Wembley Stadium match where he drew that huge crowd. If he'd have, and then of course after that, I think he went to WCW for a while. But if he'd dedicated himself to the WWF, and more importantly, if they had dedicated more to him instead of him getting in collateral damage, with the screw job thing, and also if he'd had a more healthy regimen outside the ring at that same time, he could have been one of the 3 or 4 or 5 biggest stars in the business. He was headed that way. It just everything hit at the same time. He wasn't taking care of himself outside the ring. They didn't do the right things with him, the politics, blah, blah, blah. It just, But as far as those 2 matches with Shawn, everybody knows the story. Beware of Dog, named because the Bulldog was going to challenge Shawn for the title, was in North Charleston, South Carolina. No, it wasn't North Charleston. Was it Sumter? Sure was, wasn't it? Holy shit. Anyway, a very small city in South Carolina toward the coast with a brand new civic center that seated like 7,000 or 8,000 people. So you would not, because we used to run the town for Crockett and go to the high school because there was no building, but suddenly they got a building. But there was a massive thunderstorm that settled right over the top of the building during the show, and I think knocked out the power to the whole building and the whole town. And we were pretty much off the air on pay-per-view and tried to have a few matches for the live crowd, as they were saying, we think we can get back on the air. And it was a complete cock up, as they say in England. So we redid it on pay-per-view Tuesday night, 2 nights later. I think that was from North Charleston, where we were going to do a TV taping. And so they actually had the match not on the air, and Shawn was pissed, and the emergency lights were on in the building, and that's all it was on. So it was just, the shits. And then the following Tuesday, they had a better match because it was on pay-per-view. But that whole thing just went down in everybody's memory as a fiasco. King of the Ring, which one? O'Brien?
96.
Fuck, I don't remember. I probably have not seen that show since it was done, except for the parts of anything involving Steve Austin. I forgot that it was Bulldog and Shawn on that show.
Do you think Davey Boy gets overlooked for his work in the 80s because he was partners with Dynamite?
Well, yeah, I mean, nobody was as good as Dynamite at that point. Or, well, let me rephrase that. Nobody was as spectacular as Dynamite at that point. So yeah, he would have to, because in any other team he would have been the top guy, the worker or the star or whatever at that point in time. But because he's partners with, it's like being partners with Bobby Eaton.